can't do any of those things because no matter what, I am Black first. If it's going to impact me, it will impact those who are unambiguously Black that don't look like they have any proximity to whiteness, right? Like that is the scale and the pyramid scheme, basically, of oppression. Actually, it's my XY axis. I need to draw that. I need to draw that. I'm just not. Maybe I'll get my kids to do it because they're an artist. Empty hoot. Here we go. 3 points. 1, representation versus influence. 2, creating safe spaces of trust. You know, we talk about safe and brave spaces. 3, decentering privilege in conversations. Let's go back, remember, to that conversation where I said, let's reframe privilege as leverage. Privilege makes me itch because on those binaries, on that either or thinking of those 15 pillars of supremacy culture, if someone is privileged, someone has to be oppressed. I don't want to be oppressed, friend. So if you are going to consistently harp on your white privilege, woe is me. 1, you're not even looking at your own marginalization, your own oppression, and you actually need me to be oppressed so you could feel woe is you. We got to move past that, expand the conversation to leverage. So now let's begin with number 1. Representation versus influence. Centering marginalized voices means ensuring influence and decision-making power, not just representation. As an example, a community council reserves leadership roles for marginalized voices, ensuring that decisions reflect diverse lived experiences. This is what I talk about when I say, when you're in a room, your best bet is to look around who's not in the room. Virtually, physically, metaphorically, who's not in the room? What barriers have they faced that they are not able to be in the room? And why? Why? Why are they not here? Why is their voice not here? Why is their voice not being centered? I'm not going to sit down in a conversation, even if it was about fathers' rights. Let's talk about fathers' rights for a second. A whole bunch of women should not be in a room discussing fathers' rights, right? Because that's not our lived experience. I would like to talk to an active parent, not those angry guys who are just mad that their wives left an abusive relationship. But I'd like to speak with an active parent, an active father who's in the home doing the things with their children. And what rights do you think that you would need, right? I need to hear their lived experience. I need to hear what they are going through. Their voice matters in this space because we're talking about something that impacts them. That is how that can be equitable and spread around. Everyone needs representation, not influence, right? So, 2, we're going to move through these quickly today so you can ask me some questions. 2, creating spaces of trust. Safe spaces allow marginalized voices to share openly without fear of retaliation, tokenization, or dismissal. As an example, a workplace affinity group establishes a space for Black employees to discuss experiences and collaborate on solutions. Right? To create that container, a safe space has to be what? A brave space, right? And in order for a brave space to exist, there has to be trust. There has to be safety. I have to be able to know that I can have a conversation about my own lived experiences as a Black woman, as a disabled woman, as a queer woman, as a trans woman, as whatever that is that I am having that conversation about and not fear retaliation. Right. If I'm going to have to be concerned about my job, like, are you really creating spaces where people are brave enough to speak up and say, you know what, this is not working, or what you said landed in this sort of way, what you did, or this policy is not inclusive for this many reasons, right? And there are so many things, right? I breastfed children literally longer than the Confederacy. Love to say that. Literally one child longer than the Confederacy lasted. Right? Are there workplaces that are going to make that easy for me? Right? Does your workplace accommodate parents? Right? Can we talk about what that looks like? If it can't accommodate it through childcare, do you accommodate time away? Do you accommodate hybrid working situations? What ways can you make it easier for parents to remain gainfully employed and still show up in their parenting role? That's a conversation that should not be had by a bunch of non parents because they're just theorizing, right? Now they're just influencing. They're not really representing a demographic of people that have lived experience in something and actually need accommodations, recommendations, facilities, what have you, to meet their needs. And the best people to speak for their own needs are the people who need the needs. It's that simple, right? So making that space requires a lot of accountability. It's one of my favorite words. It requires awareness, accountability, and intentionality. You have to be intentional. You have to know I'm creating this space so you could say something to me. I'm creating this space so we are going to get curious. We are going to say, okay, I didn't think about that before, right? That's that accountability. Didn't dawn on me. You know why? I don't experience it. It's not my lived experience. So there's no shame, there's no guilt in you not having covered all of the bases of marginalization. If it's not going to be your experience, if you haven't gone through it, you're most likely it's not at the top of your mind, right? Unless it's really like the work that you're doing or something that forces your awareness to that. So now you have some awareness around the situation. Are you goal oriented? Are you solution oriented? Okay, this sounds like that. I also have this margin to meet, or, we have this. As long as you can do X, Y, and Z, we can accommodate A, B, and C. Right now, if I go to you and I say, hey, I'm having these issues, I'm trying to work from home at least 3 days a week. I have kids that I need to, shuffle back and forth to places and spaces. I'm recently separated. I'm a solo parent. So my needs have changed. I don't have the same accommodations I did before. And now I get sacked or I get a 2 week notice. That's not a safe space. That's not a safe space. You did not seek awareness. You did not meet me with empathy. You did not get curious, right? You made some assumptions and just was concerned about your bottom line and not actually being a space that says, I see you, I recognize you, I value you. Because there are ways to make workspaces, and that's just this one example, accommodate the needs of the workers, which is wild inside of capitalism. It shows you exactly how cruel and vile capitalism is when you're using this lens, because for people, businesses who actually need labor from human beings, the lack of accommodations shows you exactly how much of a slavery economy we still exist in, right? Like how enslavement shaped our economy, how enslavement shapes capitalism with zero care to humanity, the needs that people have. It's a vile, vile system, right? At this point, we're still at indentured servitude. They're like, okay, we got rid of chattel slavery, unless it's imprisonment, but the rest of these fuckers can do some indentured servitude. You got to work for X amount of years to get a little pittance of something. Really violent. Anyway, so there we go. That's creating spaces of trust. We have to be able to say something, share something with you, know it's going to be held in a container. You're going to get curious and you're going to look for some solutions, right? And I'm not going to be penalized. There's not going to be punitive measures against me sharing what my needs are in a space. 3, decentering privilege in conversations. Go on and let me take a sip of my coffee. Ooh, won't he do it? He said he would. Mm. God, I love coffee. Okay. A magnet. Day 38. I mean, just skip right there. Decentering privilege in conversations. Those with privilege must step back and make room for marginalized voices to take the lead without interruption or control and reframe privilege as leverage. It is key to do that because when you do that, right? Now let's take the same situation, right? You walked into a space, it's you and I, we're in this space. You are a white woman, most likely a white liberal feminist, right? Because that's a demographic that happens to be in anti-racism work, unless they're leftist. But let's just say the most